Guys, have you ever regretted a hookup? There was this one girl, let's call her BCC for bat crap crazy. She was hot. I mean, like wow, what is this girl doing with me? Type of hot, long legs, perky honkers, beautiful face and body that just would not quit. We started hanging out, as just friends. You know, watching TV and hitting up dinner once in a while. She was flirty, a little quirky and kept doing things to make me uncomfortable. Throwing a leg over mine, resting her hand on my upper thigh, you know. Flirty. One night it progressed to home base. I was swinging like Babe Ruth reaching home base, for clarification not swinging like Mike Tyson. Out of nowhere, and let me tell you it was mind-blowing. She was an animal, a wildebeest. It was amazing. This led to days and days of intimacy. No dating, just raw consumption. After a while, to tell the truth, the passion was fading. She was still hot, and the deed was out of this world, but she also was self-centered, vapid and kinda boring. She also did dope. That was a big oof. She had no ambition in life, and was always asking for or demanding stuff. After 2 months of this I decided to break it off. I said we could still be friends, but I wanted more in a relationship than just intimacy. She calmly looked at me and said okay, if that is the way you want it. And I left her house. I was smiling and confident in the mature way I ended the relationship because to be honest I was a little concerned how she would handle it. I had seen flashes of crazy, but it all worked out amazing in the end. The next day, she calls and says she wants a real relationship with me. I am a little peeved, as I already ended it once and now I had to tell her again, so I politely said no. I think this is for the best, to which she informed me that I had no choice in the matter. We were dating. End of story. I explained that this is not how it works, but she laughed at me and said too late and hung up. So I go to work, and this crazy girl calls me at work to ask about our relationship. Not once, not twice, but non-stop. I mean I would hang up and as the phone hit the cradle, it would be ringing again. I yelled, I pleaded, I got angry, I threatened police. Nothing worked. We blocked her number. That is when the calls from other numbers started to roll in. After 2 days of this, I asked to see her in person to settle all of this. She agreed. We met. I went off, yelled, called her a child. My abe not the best choice no words considering I was deep in them sweet watery guts. She just sat there with a stupid smile on her face. There were no more calls that day. That is when she started coming into work to see me. The first time, she said I need to apologize for my behavior, can we talk for 5 minutes? And I was like oh thank God, it is over. Nope. The second we were in my office, I left the door wide open of course, she was on her knee. This was her apology. I physically had to throw her out. She came back, every day, sometimes 3 times a day. We had to get a trespass warrant against her. Then, 3 days after that I get a call from her sister. She said that BCC was out walking, trying to get over us, and she was attacked and assaulted. At this point, I am not believing anything. I of course tell her to call the police. She says all she wants is to see you. She feels safe with you and needs to talk. I refuse. The next day, I am told by her sister that BCC tried to take her life. Now no matter how much I was over this girl, I never wanted to see her pushed to that point. Her sister asked if I would come by to say hi. She was bedridden and all the family was there. Ugh, I was an idiot. I believed her. When I got there, BCC answered the door in thigh highs, a corset, high heel boots and nothing else. I turned and almost ran back to my car. So she was assaulted a few days ago, tried to off herself and this is how the door was answered? That is when the whole I was assaulted turned to the fact I assaulted her. She told friends, family, work, everyone that would listen that I did this to her. She never told the police, because she knew it would turn on her quickly with the million calls and texts etc. after threatening lawsuits, etc. She moved out of the country with her family. Thank God. But calls still continued, at least once a month for. Now get this, 7 years. She was in another country, 7 years, and she still was harassing me. However, due to the distance and infrequency of the calls, emails and texts, I was able to ignore her, until one day when I got to work and she was there, and she was mad. She started screaming at me in the parking lot about how I stole her life from her and she waited to have children with me, and now it was getting too late, I owed her a child. I am sure I sat there with a gobsmacked look on my face. I owed her a child. She demanded that we go right now and try to conceive one. I wish to God I am making this up, but no. It is true. I finally lost my temper. I lost it. I took her by the shirt, pushed her back into the car and screamed at her to never talk to me again. Ever. Our faces were close. I was red-faced and furious, and then I saw in her eyes a look like hunger. She tried to lean in and kiss me, and let me tell you boys and girls. At that point I was afraid of her. Not physically of course, but that look in her eyes. She was not all there. There is nothing she would not do to get what she wanted. Nothing. I went inside, called the police, and then I looked up, found and called her mother. It seems they moved back to the States. We had a long chat with her and I explained everything. She said in a soft voice I know, she has issues. They Baker acted her, and I have not heard from her since. What's the most significant you just messed with the wrong person moment you've witnessed or experienced? Was tending bar at a dive when I was in college and this guy Dave came in every day, had 2 beers and left. He was a pretty quiet guy and basically just kept to himself. He always smelled of cigarettes and I talked to him once. Turns out his wife cheated on him with a 16-year-old and took custody as he does not have enough money to fight it in court. He is also an experienced martial artist. He wasn't particularly big but he wasn't small either. One day 2 rednecks came in right after we opened and started pounding beers like they were pounding deers to take home to their wife Barbara. When Dave came in, they smarted off to him as he walked by, but he ignored them. I poured his first beer and told the guys to leave him alone. They didn't, just being total dirtbags. They were pure rednecks too, the stereotypical kind you would see in a movie too. Reminded me of those guys from the SpongeBob movie when Patrick and SpongeBob are on their way to Shell City. Anyways, I told those tooth-missing rednecks I was closing their tab and they had to go. As far as they were concerned, Dave was the reason they were getting kicked out. One of the rednecks stood up and proceeded to tell Dave that he would pummel him for being such a wuss. He responded with, "I've done enough fighting in my life." The way he said it was cold. Dave had obviously seen some stuff. All of a sudden the redneck sucker punched Dave in the side of the head while he was still sitting on the bar stool. Dave casually stood up and started taking his coat off and the redneck hit him square in the cheek. A girl slap was what I would call it. Had about as much power on it as Deji boxing. Dave did not even flinch. The other redneck that was still seated said, "Damn." Not like "Damn, oh you got hit." It was more like, "Damn, Leroy, you done messed up." Dave calmly finished taking his jacket off, placed it on the back of the chair and the redneck went to throw another punch. Dave caught the blow with his hand, grabbed the redneck by the face like he was palming a basketball and in one fell swoop smushed his head against the side of the bar. Dave then dragged him through the bar, still by his face, and carried him out the back and threw him in the dumpster, again, still by his face. When Dave came back and he started over to the other mouthy redneck, who at this point was making a run for the door, and Dave Sparta kicked him in the middle of the back, bending his entire body backwards into the shape of C. The sheer momentum of the kick ended up slamming his stupid face first into a big wooden door that only opened inward. Dave came back over, calmly apologized and said he was just glad he didn't end them. Dave never paid for another beer as long as I worked there. Update: my son found a very explicit tape of my wife and I and won't talk to us. After some back and forth with the wife, I put my foot down and decided we were going to have a sit down as a family and talk this out. I texted everyone in the morning to let them know to come home on time today because we need to clear the air and have a proper adult discussion. My daughter agreed and so did my son. It started off quite awkward and I began by reminding them the importance of respecting people's privacy. I told them that no one is in trouble, but I was very disappointed at my son's actions and said how he could have handled what happened with more discretion. My kids did not like this initially and they said some disrespectful things, but I reprimanded them for it and overall it was tense but calm as it could be under the circumstances. I went on and essentially explained to them that consenting adults, especially those who are married and happy together, shouldn't be shamed for whatever they have decided they enjoy, no matter how weird in their eyes it may be. This is when it started to go south. My son started to get angry, but not just at us but also his sister. She apparently told her best friend, who then told people at school. Apparently my son has been getting made fun of at school because of it and he is obviously very upset. My wife became enraged at our daughter and quite hysterical and I actually removed her from the situation. I was upset too, but shouting wouldn't solve anything. I told my daughter that she was in deep trouble for doing that and asked my son if he had told anyone and he said no, which I believe. I took my daughter's phone and laptop as punishment and grounded her until the end of the school year, but that is really just plugging a hole in the hull while the ship is on fire. She stormed off up to her room, which is where she will stay. I asked my son why he didn't mention anything to me about the bullying and he told me it was my fault and he didn't want to talk to me at all. I asked what they were saying but he wouldn't go into detail, just that they would call him names and throw bananas at him. His friends were sticking up for him though, which I was happy to hear. He then said some very disrespectful things about me and his mother, which I understood because he was angry but I couldn't excuse, so I also took his electronics off him and grounded him. He still blamed me for the tape but I told him he wasn't in trouble for finding it, he was in trouble for being a disrespectful little a-hole. He stormed off to his room, which is where he too will stay for a while. I went upstairs to my wife and she was obviously extremely upset. I held her and she cried for a while and blamed herself before she eventually calmed down enough to talk. She realized that if the cousin knew, then my sister and her husband probably knew too. She was sobbing at the thought of them spreading this to our family and we decided to try and get ahead of this. I texted my sister asking her if she was free this weekend to stop by for coffee or something. She didn't reply immediately, though I know she saw the text, and eventually she responded saying that she rather wouldn't right now. So now my wife is depressed, saying that my family are going to hate her and shun us and we would lose our community presence. I feel like I need to talk to my sister just to make sure what she knows and ask her to keep it to herself, even if I invite myself over.